Long, long ago, in a magical land called the 90s, Western RPGs were all the rage. It's 1996. Diablo 1 has just come out and everybody loves it. Minigames attempt to emulate its formula. Baldur's Gate, Icewind Dale, and Arcanium are just to name a few that were to come out in the next few years. But one that has gone largely forgotten is Darkstone. Darkstone was developed by the now defunct Delphine Software International, a French game development company best known for games such as Flashback, Moto Racer, and Another World, or Out of This World if you're from North America. They also made Shaq Fu, you know, the unforgettable classic where world-famous basketball player Shaquille O'Neal is sent to an alternate dimension by a Japanese dojo master to rescue a boy from a mummy. They made that. We let it happen. Darkstone was released in 1999 for Windows and 2001 for the PS1, and I'm most familiar with the PS1 version. I remember it fondly as the only way I knew of to get a Diablo-like experience for the PlayStation. Kind of ironic because Diablo was actually available on the PlayStation. The first thing you're going to do is create a character, selecting from one of 8 characters. You've got the Amazon, Warrior, Wizard, Sorceress, Assassin, Thief, Monk, and Priestess. And that's when I realized that there's a little bit of faulty advertising going on here. You see, there's 8 different characters, but there's only 4 different classes technically. The other 4 are just gender swaps. So that's sort of cheating. I do appreciate that there's more visual choices and that they gave you gender options, but I don't really appreciate them calling them different classes. I went for the wizard during my playthrough because magic is neat and I like big spells and boom and stuff and things. Whacking things with a club is just kind of boring. The story takes place in Uma, which is being threatened by a powerful necromancer named Lord Drac. To defeat him, you must first assemble the Time Orb, which requires you to find 7 crystals scattered throughout the land. Combat is pretty straightforward. You hold down the attack button to hit things and eventually they stop moving. In my character's case, I started with Magic Missile, which can be hotkeyed to a top trigger button to use. So I bash some faces in, I get a bunch of levels, and I figure, I'm a wizard, dump all my stat points into magic. The world is laid out so that there's 7 different fields, each with a unique quest and a correlating dungeon. Once you complete the quest, you get one of the crystals you need to complete the game. The really unique thing that the creators did was make it so you get one of 3 possible quests for each zone, as an attempt to give this game some more replayability. For example, when I came upon my first quest, it was given to me by an antique dealer, who had their sun cross stolen from a monastery. I had to figure out how to gain access to the monastery and steal it back. It was completely possible to get a completely different quest, such as one where a witch cast a curse on a village, where all the women would turn into stone if they were more beautiful than her. As she ages and finds herself getting less and less beautiful, all the women in the village turn to stone, and you need to find a way to deceive her into thinking she's actually beautiful again. This isn't just for storytelling purposes either. What quest you get completely determines the layout of the field and the dungeon. I actually really like this. That way, if you wanted to replay the game or try a different character, there's a decent chance you won't be seeing the same quest, making for a more dynamic experience. So I get my first quest, I come across the first dungeon, appropriately named Level 1. Level 1, huh? It's fine. And once I entered this dungeon, my first gripe of this game comes into play. Everything is dark, like way too dark. This can be somewhat alleviated by lighting the area, which can be done in a few different ways. You can do this by using the spell Light, you can use scrolls that cast light, or you could carry a torch, but every solution comes with its own set of problems. If you use a torch, you'll need to deal with not being able to hold a shield, and you'll need to constantly repair that torch as your equipment deteriorates. If you use scrolls, you'll need to deal with constantly keeping a supply of them, and you'll need to hotkey one of your 2 item slots. Using the light spell poses similar problems as the scroll, as it drains your mana and also takes up one of your hotkeys, this time on the spell slot. I found this problem to be completely ridiculous. It's not just the first dungeon this is a problem. As I got further in the game, it only seemed to get darker. This snowballs into another problem, which is hotkey management. On the PS1, you only have 4 buttons for hotkeys, 2 for items and 2 for spells. I was constantly going into my menu to swap spells between being able to light the room, being able to buff myself, being able to attack, heal, escape. I just had a slew of spells and not enough hotkeys to use them. I even bought light scrolls for a short while so I could alleviate my spell slot problem, but of course it just moved over the problem. I only have 2 hotkeys for items. This problem probably doesn't even exist on the PC version, but on the PlayStation version it single-handedly ruins the whole experience. It's just a giant waste of time, and it's a serious pain in the ass to keep swapping everything. Things really were smooth sailing otherwise, though. I blew through the first couple of areas, got the first couple of crystals, and everything was going alright. Combat was enjoyable enough, and I wasn't completely turned off to the game, at least not at this point in time. I even got myself a neat new spell, Magic Bomb. Boom, explosions! Explosions everywhere! And then I ran into the Amazons. Let me talk a little bit about how progression works in this game. Every time you level up, you get 6 stat points that you can distribute into one of a few stats. Strength for attack damage, dexterity for dodge, magic for mana, and vitality for health. I noticed that spellbooks, which is the only way you can get new spells in this game, often have a magic requirement for me to be able to learn them. So I told myself, screw it, I'm just going to min-max my character as hard as possible. Well, turns out that the Amazons are magic immune. So yep, here I am, paper thin, can't dodge, can't hit anything, can't do anything, and all of my attacks do 1 damage. I was honestly ready to just remake my character at this point, but that's when I discovered the ability to turn into a werewolf. While in werewolf form, you get a big bonus to attack, and it swaps your max HP and your max mana. Now I can kill them, but I'm not exactly suited for melee combat. Even with the mana and health swap, I can't exactly keep myself from dying. So I end up buying myself a ton of potions just to be able to deal with these Amazons. Get ready to hear "Please help" a whole lot, because I was near death all the time fighting these things in werewolf form. God, please help us all if you run into a group of them. Now that I figured that out, though, I shouldn't have any surprise deaths waiting. Oh, cool! Exploding crates. This isn't a rare thing either. Eventually there are exploding crates everywhere. They don't just do a small amount of damage, they drain sometimes half of my health or more, and when you die, all of your equipment drops on the spot. You can cast a spell called Perception to detect traps, but that's another thing that you have to go into your menu for, unbind a spell, bind this one, use it, then change back because you probably won't be using it again for quite some time. So I never even considered using it, not until barrels started melting my face. This brings us into another problem with the game, loading screens. As stated previously, when you die, all of your equipment falls on the ground, and retrieving your items isn't the end of the world, or at least for me it was just a matter of getting there, then casting invisibility, and picking it all up before the spell wore off. But get ready to see loading screens a lot. And I mean a lot. Get ready for it to be just the biggest waste of time ever. Every time you load a map, you get a loading screen, and sometimes your stuff is many, many maps away. That means later in the game, seeing this loading screen up to 10 times before you even get to your body isn't uncommon. I've done this before and arrived at where my stuff was and made a minor goof where I died. This set me back like half an hour just in loading screens. It's dumb. I always want to just snap my controller in two, but luckily I always manage to recover my stuff and eventually just press on. Now, this is where I want to talk about the difficulty ramp of this game, because I don't know if it was my class, my build choice, this game, I couldn't figure out what it was, but it just got exponentially harder as time went on. Before, Amazons were my biggest fears, but as I got further in the game, everything was able to kill me in seconds. Any room with more than a single thing was like playing Wizard DDR, where I had to breakdance across the room spamming Magic Bomb, afraid if I so much as got sneezed on I wouldn't even get so much as a "please help," and I'd be looking at loading screens until the day I'd die. Amazons were not a one-off either. As soon as I started seeing them, I never stopped seeing them, and they stuck around until the end of the game. They just got progressively harder. So instead of using a potion or two to kill them, I had to use a potion like every single time I got hit, or else I'd just die on the second or third hit. I mean, do I need more dexterity to dodge? More vitality? I got these rings that gave me a ton of health, but is it not good enough? What am I doing wrong? Is it just the wizard? I was hoping that, at the very least, my ridiculous amount of magic would come to use, but the spellbooks I came across I still couldn't even use. Every once in a while I'd find a scroll that allows me to use a spell for one time, and oh neat, flamethrower? Firewall? These sound really nifty. Wow, these look really good. And I find them available in the shop, so that must mean I should be able to use them. I'm definitely getting nothing but magic. But nope, I'm like 50 magic points short. So I guess I pumped 1,000,000 points into magic for nothing. There's only 2 places to obtain new spells, from these bookstands or from this NPC. If you don't find it one of those 2 ways, you can't have it. I literally used only Magic Bomb as my only offensive spell the moment I got it within the first hour of the game until the very end with the last boss fight, and I did not have any spell that topped it. What was the point of me getting so much magic then? For more mana? Holding X to bash things face in as a warrior has to be more straightforward than this. So, tons of exploding crates, hundreds of potions, and an unfathomable amount of magic bombs later, I make it to Drac. When you arrive, he turns into a dragon right in front of you, and the final battle begins. I pull out all the stops, and I use all of my best spells and tricks when... yeah, there's no way I can fight this guy fairly. No, not after all the problems I've been through. It's just not gonna happen. It is time to cheat him to death. So let's dissect this a bit. When you run into him, he has 2 attacks. He either spews a fireball at you, or he just straight up whacks you if you get too close. He also summons a couple mini dragons to make sure that you don't just run around him all day. So here's what I did. I casted invisibility and I found out that neither the whelps nor him can see me, and I smacked him, which made it so he saw me and started attacking me, but the whelps didn't. I used this to my advantage and lured him away from the whelps. Then I hotkeyed Reflection, Magic Bomb, and Mana Potions. See, every time he shoots a fireball, it can actually be completely negated with a spell called Reflect. It makes it so any spell that hits you just gets rebound. So I just smashed the top of my controller, cycling between making sure Reflect was up, shooting him with magic bombs, and keeping my mana topped off until he died. Even down to the last boss, I couldn't defeat him without exploiting him. And exploiting there was. From there you get a neat little cutscene, you get a ton of gold, and the game is over. You have beaten Darkstone. You might be thinking, wow, that sounds pretty bad. And I would say, it was pretty bad. But I still had fun with it. I know that sounds silly after how much I complained, but this game's biggest offense is being a relic of the past. In fact, this game was somewhat dated the moment it came out for the PS1. Diablo 2 came out for the PC a year prior, which is a much better game, and it's debatable if this game is even better than the first Diablo. I personally would say it isn't, but there's still enough fun to be had with this game. I just kinda got into this old school mentality where you sort of expect this sort of unfairness from a game of this genre in this era, and you expect these sort of loading times and menu issues from a first generation CD-based game console. After my first completion, you're offered the ability to continue on to another playthrough with the same character on harder modes, and for a second I actually considered doing this. I think a specific type of person can appreciate what this game has and how it handled its limitations, like me. But I think if I were to be very general, this game is not too good at all. If you wanted to pick this game up, it could be had for $5 or less for the PlayStation, or $10 on Steam. If it sounds interesting to you, it's a fun little time sink. But if you're actually looking to get a good hack and slash RPG to play through, you can do much better with games like Path of Exile, Torchlight 2, or Diablo 3. And if you're looking to go a little more retro, Diablo 2 or Baldur's Gate has you covered.
Please help.